Hey there. So I know these are called seaside chats, but first two things. One, the weather's pretty brutal. Big rain, windstorm, and I know how much you love wind on these videos. And the rain, of course, with the camera. And the other thing, I'm not sure if anybody watching this is a listener to the Sirius XM Dead channel and the show I do, the Today in Grateful Dead History. I've been really ill the last couple of weeks, and I finally got over it mostly. A little tired still, still hearing my voice a bit maybe. But I'm trying to avoid kind of hanging out outside in the rain and the wind. I know it's springtime, but it's still going to be cold and rainy. So I've kind of taken a little breather from doing too much kind of cold rain and snow, but cold and wind and rain. So anyhow, I'm feeling a lot better. Thanks for wondering. But yeah, so anyhow, I'm here. This is the Dave's Picks 26 announcement video. Now, we announced the show a long time ago. Obviously, well, not obviously, hopefully you know maybe. It's November 17th, 1971 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The first time the Dead would ever play in the great state of New Mexico. I've only been there once. I went to a Grateful Dead conference in 2003 in Albuquerque. And then I drove to Santa Fe afterwards. And then I drove to Taos. Because someone had said to me, oh, you going to New Mexico? Are you going skiing? And I thought, New Mexico? What are you talking about? I don't know what I was thinking, but I didn't know there was skiing in New Mexico at the time. So I went skiing in Taos. It was incredible. And I remember eating some great, seriously great food all throughout New Mexico. It was really wonderful. So Dave's Picks Volume 26. Amazing, we're at 26 already. Albuquerque, New Mexico, November 17th, 1971. Okay, bit of context. August of 1971, August 26th in the Bronx, Pigpen played his last show with the Dead for about 5 months until the December shows when he came back at the beginning of December. And in the meantime, the Dead had hired Keith Godchow. They hired him in September. He did some rehearsals in September. His first show was October 19th of 1971 in Minnesota. He did that little short tour that ran through Halloween. 2 weeks, not even, and then they took a couple weeks off, and then they hit the road again in middle of November, and we released the November 15th, and I'm going to say the 15th and the 14th show, because the main feature was the 15th, but we also had some bonus material from the show on the 14th of November, Texas. Wonderful shows, really great. That's one with the first set, Dark Star, and in my opinion, well, until this thing came along, I'll get there in a second, one of the greatest Not Fade Away, Going Down the Road, Not Fade Aways you're ever going to hear, particularly the Not Fade Away, the transition into Going Down the Road, Feeling Bad. Then, as you might have heard over the last couple of years, about a year and a half ago, almost, a year and a half ago, a lot of tapes were returned to the vault. Obviously, Cornell was one of them. There were a lot. And you know, we've clearly been hyping them when we do release them, and we've released a few. Binghamton 77 was one of them. Eugene 122 78 was one of them. And one of the shows, okay, so in saying that, you're probably very aware that those big shows, Cornell and Red Rocks the previous year had come back, Red Rocks 78, and Binghamton and Eugene, and all these shows had come back. But when these tapes came back, there were a few shows in there that I wasn't expecting, which was a real treat as an archivist and as a Deadhead to see some of these other tapes come back. And one of these shows was a show that I had had my eyes on and my ears on, although all I'd ever heard was a very poor sounding tape of it, was 11/17/71 in Albuquerque. And again, I'd heard a really mediocre, really muddy, it might have even been mono. It wasn't a very good sounding tape at all. But through that mediocre sound quality, the performance quality completely shone through. So I'd always had my eyes and my ears on that show, but it was a show that we didn't have in the vault, so we couldn't do anything. A couple years ago, a year and a half ago, Albuquerque 71 comes back. So in addition to the stuff we immediately went into production with Eugene and Binghamton and Cornell and Boston and Buffalo and New Haven, Jeffrey made a few copies of a few things so we could use them as reference to see about future things. Albuquerque was one of them. And Albuquerque, from the very bad tape I'd always had, was much, much better than I expected. I'm not going to get into the details too much because there's a lot of music. It's packed into 2 CDs. The third CD is the Ann Arbor Show, which we'll get to in a minute. But the first set, classic, 1971. Then remember, this is Keith only. Pigpen would rejoin the band about 2 weeks later. But Keith, as good as he was on the October tour, on the November tour, which was much shorter, he was an integral part of the Grateful Dead sound. When you listen to the Grateful Dead music from this era, you're hearing Keith as much as you're hearing Bob and Jerry and Phil and Billy, and it is an incredibly tight 5-man unit. This is before Donna joined, this is before Pigpen came back, when it would become a 7-person unit by the time of Europe 72. There's still a 5-person unit, not the original, of course. Pig was gone, Keith was in. So it opened a very typical set from the era, with a truck-in opener. First set filled with all the stuff you'd expect from some of the stuff from Jerry's first album that would come out in 72, some of Weir's stuff. A few highlights in this set: Big Railroad Blues, Cumberland Blues, Playing in the Band, I'll talk about that in a second, You Win Again. Some really exceptional music in this first set. Everything is played remarkably well, perfectly. Definitive versions from the era, we could even say. And so the first set, again, incredible. One More Saturday Night to end the first set. Perfect. Really great version of it. What I was going to say about Playing in the Band. Playing in the Band, when it started being played in early 71, February, March, April of 71, had no jam whatsoever. And that really kind of goes for the summer tour, summer 2. And then something happened on the October tour into the November tour particularly, where no, we're not talking 15-minute, 18-minute versions of Playing in the Band that we'd see later in 72. It's only about 7 minutes long. But just like the one on Ace that would come out in 1972, the studio version of Playing in the Band, featuring the Grateful Dead on Bob Weir's solo record Ace, which if you haven't heard it in a while, I highly recommend it. It's a perfectly contained, incredible, tight, small jam, like a couple minutes, minute or two. But it would indicate where Playing in the Band was going to go later in 72 and 73 and 74. Culminating with the 46-minute version in Seattle in 74. But the Playing in the Band, really exceptional. Now the second set is where it's at. A really great Ramble on Rose opens it up. Second set. Sugar Magnolia. Great Sugar Mag. Ripping. And then the second set, it's the next batch of music I'm going to talk about is unlike any music I've heard from 1971. And I know I can be prone to hyperbole. I try not to be. I try to just kind of go with the flow. But Cryptical Envelopment, which is kind of a rarity at the time. But they were playing a lot in October, but it kind of slowly eased its way out of the repertoire around this time. So Cryptical Envelopment drums into a version of the other one that it's hard to describe what happens. And what it is, it's a fierce, I think, you hear about some of those 72 versions where it's jazzy, or it might be psychedelic, or it might be Jerry's, going into the Tiger jam. This is a fierce version of the other one. And Phil is incredibly aggressive in a great way. He's assertive and aggressive. Bobby's doing the same thing. Jerry's like just a monster on this. Billy holding things down as he always did in 1971, 72, playing perfect drums. And then Keith is like, I don't want to call him the wild card because, he's a member of the Grateful Dead, but he's on par with everybody else in the band doing this incredibly intense, and again, I think fierce is a good word for this other one. It is an incredible version of the other one. Really one of my favorites. Like I find myself when I listen to it almost on the verge of screaming with joy because it's so powerful, it's so unique, and that's what I love about Grateful Dead music, is that I love how unique every version of every song is, and some are unique in a jazzy way, in the case of the other one or something. Some are unique in a fierce way. Some are, and this is a really powerful strong, fierce. It's got subtlety, it's got nuance, but then it comes right back, and like you're gonna hear Phil doing stuff you've never heard him do before. Bobby too. Everybody in the band, all 5 of them, are just doing some incredible stuff. Once the Other One Jam is done, it falls. It doesn't go back into the cryptical reprise. It goes into a beautiful version of Wharf Rat. Now remember, Wharf Rat, for most of these listeners, is brand new. Skull and Roses, brand new album. It had debuted Wharf Rat back in February, but you know, the Dead had never played Albuquerque. So, you know, I think a lot of these people, now the place they played to is totally worth checking out, the Albuquerque Civic. There'd been a concert there just before the Dead, and there were riots at the concert, and they almost canceled the Dead show, and they decided to let the Dead show proceed as a test. And if this one was okay, we'll let other concerts. If it isn't okay, this is it. No more concerts ever. And it was okay. The Dead crowd was good. Big crowd, you can hear it. Really good, really great crowd. And then Wharf Rat, after that, we get Not Fade Away, Going Down the Road, Not Fade. Now, I know I talked about the one from 11:15 from a couple days earlier. This one is just as good, possibly even better. It's not as long, it doesn't have that China Cat jam the way it does on 11:15, but it is an exceptional version of Not Fade, Going Down the Road, Not Fade. One of these ones that if you're ever DJing a Grateful Dead party and you're putting together kind of the best stuff to get people up and dancing and always kind of getting people rocking, this Not Fade Away, Going Down the Road is seriously, if I'm putting together a playlist for a party, this is going on it, always. It's really that good. So that kind of wraps up our Albuquerque show, and it is a wonderful batch of music. Again, it was a show that we haven't had in the vault ever until a year and a half ago, and then as soon as it came home, the decision was made, let's put this out, more people should hear this. It's really great. Keith has been in the band for a month at this point. You wouldn't know it. It's like he's been in the band for 6 years since the Dead started. Pigpen's not in the band. Now, Pigpen's not in the band, but our bonus disc, our third disc, so it's a 2-disc show. The third disc, and for those of you who subscribed, which hopefully is a lot of you, the bonus disc is virtually the full Ann Arbor show on 12/14/71. Other one, Wharf Rat, same kind of second set jam, but it does also feature Pigpen. Very different show. Now, you're going to notice that on disc 3 and the bonus disc, the show has been seriously resequenced. We have resequenced the heck out of it. I think it's the entire show minus one song. I think we had to cut one song because of the length. So it's the whole Ann Arbor show, 12/14. The reason it's so heavily resequenced, just in case you're wondering, is because on the bonus disc, we aren't. A bonus disc is kind of I mean, it's a bonus. It's something that we give to you as a thank you for subscribing to the Dave's Big Series. We're not allowed to give away cover songs on that. So, because of that, we can't put on Johnny Be Good or anything. We can't put on You Win Again. We can't put on Not Fade, Going Down the Road, Not Fade. We can't do any of that stuff on a bonus disc because that music is not the band's music. Those are cover songs, and we'd have to pay on that. And so we can't do that. So anything that was a cover song on Ann Arbor has been moved over to CD3, which we obviously pay the songwriters and all that. And CD4, the bonus disc, if you'll notice, is entirely made up of Ice 9 songs, we call them, which is to say they're not covers, they're Grateful Dead songs. So anyhow, if you're wondering about that, but, you know, we never break a jam up, I'll say that. So you're not going to find an Other One jam kind of getting broken up in order to make that happen. We'll never kind of cut a jam in the middle of a sequence. But you can resequence it, throw it into iTunes or whatever program you have, or make a CD, whatever, and resequence it the way it should be. But that's why, if you're wondering, I mean, I'd be wondering if I looked at this set list, I go, what the heck is with this? It's a pretty good set list the way it was. Why'd they mess it all up? That's why we messed it all up. Anyhow, I guess the point of this video is to tell you to go buy this thing. It's probably going to sell out pretty quickly. The last one sold out less than 24 hours, maybe less than 6 hours. I don't know, something crazy. That was the one that came out from Binghamton 77, which was a great show. this is just as great a show. So it's going to sell out quickly. So if you're watching this video and you didn't subscribe to the Dave's Picks series, I would suggest stopping the video right now. I would have stopped it a while ago. Stop it right now and go to DeadNet and get Dave's Picks Volume 26, because it will be gone soon, and it is really an exceptional show. I've never heard a show like this, and I've heard a lot of Grateful Dead shows, as I'm sure you have. Again, it's set list wise kind of standard for the era. Performance wise, you've never heard anything like this. It's really great Grateful Dead music. I love it. We're busy at work on some bigger releases for later in 2018, so I'm going to kind of keep this video short. I don't know what time it is. It's been going on for quite some time. So we're working on that. We're working on Dave's Picks 27. Got a great thing lined up for that. We've kind of just recently pulled the trigger on deciding what show that's going to be. Got a lot of good things. This is going to be a good year. Actually, a really good year. We've got. I was just thinking about. We've got a thing, and then we got a Dave's Picks 27 and a 28. We got this other thing and this other thing. This is a good year. It's a good year to be a Deadhead. I think it always is. We've been, I think, lucky with a vault with so much great music in it, and a band that played so much great music, and recordists who recorded it. So thank you for listening. Dave's Picks 26, available exclusively at dead.net, and it'll be gone really soon. Again, sorry my seaside chat is not at the seaside. The wind probably wasn't a bother, but it's crazy windy and rainy out, and I've been really, really ill the last 2 weeks, worse than I've ever been. Finally out of it now, but I don't want to go stand in the rain. I mean, I love you, everyone listening, but I gotta take care of myself. So anyhow, thank you for listening. Dave's Picks 26, available now. We'll see you at the next video, which will be in probably July, for Dave's Picks 27, although we might have an announcement before that about something else. But I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to give you any hints. But it's a good year coming up. Pay attention to what Dead.net announces, because don't miss out. There's some really cool things coming up. Some really cool stuff. One thing, we've never done anything like it, so I'm excited about that. Thank you for listening and watching. And again, sorry I'm a little hoarse and under the weather, but yeah. It's a great one. I really mean it. I highly recommend Dave's Picks 26. One of the best shows I've ever heard from the 71 through 74 one drummer Keith arrangement of the Grateful Dead. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.